Thank you for this invitation to talk about a topic that...
I apologise. I'm adjusting still, and I forgot to tell you, we have to get this adjusted perfectly, so
it's all right.
1 second here. I apologise.
Put your hand on your heart.
Different height between you and Stella.
Out for 11. 7-11. Oh, in for 7.
Okay, darling, you are perfect.
I'm good? Lovely, thank you. Soft lens, I hope. Thank you for this invitation, and it's no irony that I'm here to talk to you about digital distraction and dependence, and I have my laptop lid opened in front of you. Thank you for this opportunity to share a topic that I feel so passionate about sharing. And I want to start by asking you in the room here today, and for those of you watching along to the replay, who here feels that they are tethered to their phone or to technology? Who here feels like they are a slave to the screen? Who here feels like technology controls us? I'm going to start by giving you two little indicators. Who here suffers from nomophobia, fear of not having your phone? Who would travel home in the morning traffic if you thought you left your digital appendage charging on the kitchen counter or next to the bed? Now, maybe you don't have nomophobia. Maybe you suffer from phantom vibration syndrome. You know, that tingling feeling that your phone is vibrating and it's nowhere near your physical body. Now, I use these as two examples to show you as adults with fully developed brain architecture how we have become seduced by the screen, how we have become obsessed, infatuated and digitally dependent. Now, this is not a talk about demonising technology. I'm a huge advocate for technology. I couldn't live without it. In fact, I had the opportunity just earlier this morning to meet somebody in real life who I had met 8 years ago via the internet. And it wasn't an internet date, I will clarify. But technology is powerful if we are in control of it. But I am worried at this point in our society, at this juncture in time, that we are no longer in control of technology and that the corollary is true, where technology is controlling us. And I am not immune to the digital pull. The reason I have my laptop lid open, and I've been so close to shutting it, is because I want to share a personal anecdote of where my attention was hijacked by technology and the cost that it had on my, at the time, middle son. I had been over in Singapore, ironically, speaking at a conference for Apple. I had 2 children at the time, and I had flown back into Sydney in a very sleep-deprived state and had retrieved my 15-month-old who I was still feeding at the time, so he was very gleeful to see me. My breasts were also equally pleased to see him. And we spent a lot of time cuddling together. My mother-in-law, who had been caring for him in my absence for the 3 days I was in Singapore, had said, "Do you want me to stay? You look really tired." And I said, No. I was the martyr mother at this time. I can handle it. It's fine. Well, I had only had one work obligation to do that day, apart from looking after Billy, my son, and it was a work call, a conference call that was scheduled during his nap time, and he was a fairly predictable napper, but he will soon become a middle child, so he was behaving like a middle child and was quite unpredictable. And when I saw that he wanted to spend the rest of the day either cuddling or feeding, I knew that the nap time wasn't going to take place. So I quickly opened my laptop lid, and I thought I'll send an email to my work colleague just saying I'm going to have to postpone our appointment. Could we reschedule it for next week? And in the space of the couple of minutes where I sent this email, this is what happened to poor Billy. And I haven't shared this picture with many people because I was riddled with what many women know as mother's guilt. My digital distraction had physically caused my son harm. Now, we went to the hospital. He didn't require stitches. And I also want to add the anecdote that 2 weeks prior, he had done the exact same thing with my husband, who was watching him vigilantly. But that is no excuse. I am a digital health, well-being and productivity expert. I am not a digital parenting expert. I think anyone who claims they're a parenting expert, those words are an oxymoron. But here I was, an expert in the field about how technology can captivate us, how it's impacting our children's health and well-being, how it's impacting our adolescents' well-being, and how it's impacting on us as adults, and yet still I was seduced by the screen. My attention was hijacked and captivated only for a small fracture of a time, but enough for a child to sustain an injury. And we are hearing anecdotal reports. In my book, Raising Your Child in a Digital World, I interviewed paediatric emergency department doctors and paediatricians who are reporting increasing numbers of young children presenting to emergency departments with serious playground injuries. Now, they have two theories at the moment. One of them that kids have poorly developed gross motor skills because they're spending more time with screens than outdoor, so they don't have the musculoskeletal health to help them manage the playground. But another possible, more plausible explanation is parental digital distraction. Parents whose attention is being hijacked by technology. And it's not just parents. I think all of us, if we're honest, admit that technology is captivating. This is why we now know that 72% of us reach for our phone before our partner first thing in the morning. Please don't tell me where you sit in this statistic, but we now know that 80% of us take our phones into the bathroom to check social media. A survey with women was recently done, and they asked women, would you rather give up sex or your mobile phone for a week? And you know what 85% of the women said. The thought of being digitally amputated is akin to cutting off our oxygen supply. And so we as adults are being hijacked by technology. And in some instances, like my instance with Billy, it's having physical consequences. I was at a local playground once, and I call myself a keen social observer. My husband says I'm a sticky beak. But I was doing some social observation, and Billy was eating sand and leaves underneath the rope climbing apex that every parent dreads and every child loves. And a 4-year-old girl had come to the playground. She'd announced that it was her 4th birthday. She was climbing to the top of the rope apex, and she was almost at the top, and she was calling for her mum. And her cries became more frantic. And I observed Mum was scrolling through her phone and gave her daughter the token thumbs up. I watched this 4-year-old girl fall from the top of the rope climbing apex onto the soft floor because her mum was digitally distracted. Now, this is a pervasive issue. We're seeing this. We are now using technology from the womb to the tomb. We are seeing, I'm working with maternal health practitioners at the moment, lactation consultants and maternal health nurses, because we are really concerned about a phenomenon called brexting, breastfeeding and texting. And it doesn't matter if it's breast or bottle, it doesn't matter if it's mum or dad. What matters is that parents are being digitally disconnected when they are feeding infants. Now, this is having a profound impact, we think, and I'm the first to say, as a researcher in this field, I'm embarrassed to stand here in front of you and say we don't yet have the longitudinal data. We are, in some regards, conducting a bit of a living experiment. But what we know from the neuroscience, and it confirms this, is that when a child is being fed, no matter how it's being fed and by whom it's being fed, they engage in a vital skill called facial mapping. But we now know if parents are digitally distracted whilst feeding, not only are they not making the eye contact that we know infants and young children need for optimal development, but in some instances, the phone is actually a physical impediment for the child gazing at parents. And we have done scans where we know what's happening in infants' brains when they are engaging in facial mapping. Unique regions of their brain are activated. I'm worried that we're missing the micro moments in life because we're always archiving moments to our camera roll. Are we missing the important moment on a date with our partner because our phone interrupts the conversation? Are parents being digitally disconnected, missing out on the little glance or the wink or the thumbs up at swimming lessons because they're quickly trying to catch up on email? Now, as I said, this is not about demonising technology. I think if we can understand why we are being seduced by technology, we can appreciate why we have become distracted. And there are 3 reasons, I believe, why technology is causing us to become digitally dependent and digitally distracted. The first reason is that technology caters for our 3 most fundamental psychological drivers. As human beings, our 3 fundamental needs are the need for connection, competence, and control. Why do we crave connection? As you've heard from the stories, and I've heard today, we are hardwired for relational connection. We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we're enough. This is why multiplayer video games, why social media has become so prevalent. We want to feel like we're connected. We also want to feel like we're competent and in control. So that's the first reason. Technology caters for our psychological drivers. I get to depict an air of confidence and competence by what I share on social media. I feel like I have a locus of control when I'm online. I can search for information that's pertinent to me. The second reason that technology is hijacking and causing this dependence and distraction is because it causes neurobiological changes in the brain. As I'm sure you're all aware, whatever you're doing, or whether it's your children watching clips online, technology releases dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter, and so we crave more and more of it. But we know, as we heard earlier about the prefrontal cortex, that dopamine actually hijacks the logical part of our brain. When our brain gets flooded with dopamine, the intellectual, logical CEO centre of the brain switches off. We know that when we use technology, many of us enter the psychological state of flow. This is where we become so enraptured with what we're doing that we literally lose track of time. This is why those of you with children in the room, when they look at you with their puppy dog eyes and say, "But I've only just turned it on," when they're throwing their techno tantrum because you're asking them to switch off, they're not trying to dupe you. They are into this psychological state of flow. This is why we think we will go in and check Facebook for 10 minutes, and 2.5 hours later, we are still in that rabbit hole. When we're online, we enter something else too, called the state of insufficiency. And this is the one I personally battle with the most. We never ever feel done. We never get that feeling of being complete. Unlike completing a jigsaw puzzle or a Lego set, where there's a clear line of demarcation between being complete and incomplete, in the online world, it's a never-ending chase. This is why, that artificial state of inbox zero, why you rejoice when you clear your inbox, when you go and get a glass of water and you come back and there's that awful red icon. We never ever get the sense of being done. This is why young children are throwing techno tantrums when they switch off technology, because there's always one more YouTube clip I could watch. There's always another television episode I could watch. There's always another level I could get to in the game. We also know that technology causes changes, physiological changes in the body. We know, for example, one of the main reasons that we get the techno tantrums in young children, one of the reasons we find it hard to switch off as adults, is because our sensory system and our nervous system get hyper-aroused when we're online. There is always so much for us to process and to consume. And so when we switch off, we become very agitated and frustrated. And the third reason that technology has become so seductive, so pervasive, and if I dare use the word so addictive, is because it has been intentionally designed to prey on our psychological vulnerabilities. As humans, we suffer from something called loss aversion, FOMO, fear of missing out. We are hardwired not to check things. We know that when we use technology, that little red icon that says you have 21 unread messages, or the alerts and notifications that come through, trigger an emergency response in you. That red icon was intentionally designed to be read because it creates a sense of an alert and danger. So we know that we are not unique, that this is a situation, and as I mentioned at the beginning, digital amputation, or I call it digital abstinence, isn't the solution. Technology is here to stay for all of us, and so our job is to tame our technology habits and not to be a slave to the screen. Thank you.